Hey Raiders, just want to talk about order of operations and both how to perform it and then also how to document your work so it's clear for yourself to help you avoid mistakes as you're going along, especially with the more complicated problems, and also so it's clear for the teacher. So with order of operations, we have our starting point is that phrase PEMDAS. And that's sort of the summary of the order of operations in which we perform them when we have multiple operations to do. First, anything in parentheses, then you do any exponents, then multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. And just the way we verbally say this, PEMDAS, it implies that multiplication always happens before division and that addition always happens before subtraction. But it's really not quite that straightforward. So a lot of times PEMDAS is written this way instead to more reflect visually how it really works. Where you'd still verbally say PEMDAS. So it sounds again like multiplication is always before division, addition is before subtraction. But when you write it this way visually, it highlights the fact that multiplication and division are given equal priority to each other. So if you ever have a couple operations in a row where there's multiplication and division, just like we read starting at the left and move to the right, you would do the same thing with the operations. So if you had two operations back to back and one of them, the division was first, you'd actually do that first, even though verbally it sounds like the D is always after M in PEMDAS. And then the same thing with addition and subtraction. They're given equal priority. So if you ever have multiple operations in a row with addition and subtraction, regardless of the order of the addition and subtraction, just go left to right. Okay, so with that kind of quick overview about PEMDAS and what it really means, let's dive into some examples here. Okay, so if we look at this one here, right off the bat, we have parentheses, but if you notice, it's just designed to separate some of our numbers here. There's nothing to actually do in parentheses. There's no operation there. So the general strategy I'd recommend for these problems until you get comfortable with it is to write a little reminder for yourself off to the side of PEMDAS. Again, I prefer writing it this way to remind myself that multiplication and division get equal priority with each other, and same thing with addition and subtraction. And what I like to do is to look at my problem, whatever I'm working with here, and identify the operations that I have to deal with and kind of put little check marks by my PEMDAS there. And that kind of gives me a little kind of a graphic organizer here. So we have addition, and then when there's no operation visibly present, that means multiplication. So I'm going to put little marks here that we have addition and multiplication. So following order of operations, as we go this way in PEMDAS, the first thing we have to take care of is multiplication. So even though the multiplication doesn't show up first as you go left to right, it gets higher priority than the addition. So that tells us that this is what we have to do first, the 5 times the 2. Now here's where I want to also focus on not just the actual order of operations to follow, but how you document it, both to keep yourself on point and also for your teacher to understand you. So if this is what I'm going to do first to communicate that, I'd put a little bracket. That's your way of communicating to the teacher. All right, that's what I'm going to do first. And then everything else in the expression, you just carry it straight down. So I'm going to bring down 3 plus, but now I'm showing that this is the operation I'm doing first. 5 times 2 is 10. And then going back over to here, okay, I took care of the fact that I had multiplication. Now the only thing left to take care of is the addition. So 3 plus 10 is 13. And I took care of that, so this problem's done. Okay, moving on to the next one. Here's an example that highlights the equal priority piece of multiplication and division. So again, I'm going to write my little reminder for PEMDAS. And in this particular scenario, I have division and multiplication. So I have both of these. And again, since multiplication and division get equal priority, anytime you have them consecutively, those operations, just do them right in the order you see them. So not only is that the thought process behind what you do first, but again, focusing on how you actually document it, I'm going to put a little bracket here to show that's what I'm doing first. So even though when you verbally say PEMDAS, multiplication is said before division, they give equal priority. So if they're ever back to back, just do them right in order, left to right. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now this becomes 6 times 3, which gives us 18. So there's that one. Moving on. Okay, so if we look at this one, we have a fraction, but we need to remember that really represents division. And then in this case here, we have 2 signs back to back, 2 negative signs, so that will become positive. And then we have multiplication. And if you look in the parentheses, there's no actual operation to do in there. It's just a means of separating our numbers here. So I'm going to write my little reminder about order of operations. And I'm just going to indicate the operations I have to do. So this fraction, that division bar there, that gives me division. And then minus a negative will become plus, that's going to be addition. And then we have multiplication here. So we can rewrite this and simplify this a bit here. So right off the bat, I'm going to take care of these signs. Minus a negative becomes positive. So I can rewrite this as 21 divided by 3 plus 3 times 2. So we've cleaned this up a little bit here. So in terms of our order of operations, we have to take care of multiplication and division first, and then the addition piece will be done last. So 21 divided by 3 gives us 7. So this now simplifies to 7 plus 3 times 2. So we took care of our division. Now we have to take care of the fact that we still have multiplication, we still have addition. Well, order of operations, the multiplication comes before the addition. So we take care of this piece. So 7 plus 6. And then finally, that just gives us the last step here. 7 plus 6 is 13. Moving on. So in this one here, we have a square root. Now a square root is just a different way of writing an exponent. So when you say PEMDAS, there's no spot in there for square root, but it really is just a type of exponent. It's really a fractional exponent. So I'm going to write my little reminder about PEMDAS. In terms of identifying what operations we have to deal with, we have addition. Shows up a couple times. And then we have an exponent here. And again, the square root, it really is just another way of expressing an exponent, a fractional exponent. So we actually have that show up a couple times. So that gives us our game plan. So I'm going to just carry down some operations that I'm going to do later. 2 to the third power. Well, if you remember, that really means 2 times itself. 2 to the third power really means 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So this becomes 8 plus 8 plus, and square root of 36 means what number multiplied by itself equals 36? Well, that would be 6. So we just took care of both exponents here. The 2 to the third power, and then the radical 36, the square root of 36, that's another way of expressing an exponent. So now we just have our 2 addition operations to do. So 8 plus 8 is 16 plus 6, 16 plus 6, 22. Okay, moving on to one that's a little more elaborate. When you see this big division bar, this is really a way of, not only ultimately are we going to do division, but it's a way of separating, do everything in the numerator, simplify that as much as possible, and get a new simplified numerator, do everything we can in the denominator, get a new simplified denominator, and then ultimately at the end, it becomes numerator divided by denominator. So if we look across the top here, we got a couple different things going on. So when we identify our game plan for how we're going to simplify the numerator, let's see what we've got. We have an exponent here, and with no specific operation shown here, just the parentheses, there's nothing to do inside the parentheses, it's just a way to separate this number. This is multiplication. So we have an exponent, multiplication, and addition. So that's the order we're going to do this in. So in terms of documenting your work here, this is where it gets a little messy. That's why it's important to be organized. So the first thing to do would be the exponent. So 3 squared, or 3 times 3. So I'm going to carry, in this case, up, because so that's where my physical space to work is. Carry up everything that I'm not doing yet. So 3 squared becomes 9. So this becomes 2 plus 9 times 2. So I just took care of that exponent. Now we've got to take care of multiplication right here. So I'm going to carry up the 2 plus. So 2 plus, well, 9 times 2 is 18. So I took care of that operation of multiplication. So the last thing to do in the numerator is to take care of the addition. So 2 plus 18 is 20. So all of that simplifies to a numerator of 20. Now I'm going to do the same technique for my denominator here. Put my little reminder about order of operations. So I have an exponent. And then notice here, minus a negative. In an earlier example, I simplified that. But in this case here, notice that the parentheses includes -2, including the sign, and that's an exponent. So that's going to take priority there. So we have another exponent, and it's going to be the quantity -2 times -2, and then we have addition. So in terms of handling this, 2 to the third power, we saw that in the earlier example, means 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, minus. Now, notice here the parentheses includes the negative sign. So when it's squared, it's the quantity -2 times -2. Well, negative times a negative is positive. So this becomes 4. So this becomes 8 minus 4 plus 6. So now in this case, we've taken care of both of our exponents. So now we just have subtraction and addition, and they're back to back here, these signs, these operations. So you do them, since addition and subtraction have equal priority, you do them in the order you see them, going left to right. So 8 minus 4 gives us 4. 4 plus 6 gives us 10. All right, so like always, Raiders, if you have any questions, you can contact me on email or Remind. Talk to you later.